Welcome to today's episode of the People and Purpose and Profits Business Coaching Podcast. My name is Brian Buck, and my wonderful co-host is...
And I'm Kat.
And I am so excited to bring to you Anthony Metten. He's someone that I got to meet in a mastermind that we participate in. And every time this guy opens his mouth, he impresses me. And I know our small to medium-sized business audience, you're going to be impressed as well. And you're going to learn some really awesome stuff. So Anthony, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, say a little bit about what you do, and then we'll dive in.
Okay, Anthony Metten. I'm in Silicon Valley, California. I'm an executive coach, speaker, and trainer. I have about 20 years in the financial service industry, working my way up to senior vice president before I walked away. And, you know, in my younger years, I spent a lot of time in blue collar, equipment rental, construction, dealership, automotive dealership work, alarm installation, just a variety of different things. I left the corporate world in June of 2007 because I finally had enough, which interesting enough, that was right before the January 2008 bank meltdown. So timing is beautiful. But yeah, so I finally just had enough and I walked away, became a coach and speaker. I have a master's in counseling psychology with an emphasis on career development. And I'm sure a lot of other things will come up as we go along.
All right. No, that's awesome. So I always like to start off, the purpose of the show is the balance between people and purpose and profits and how all three of those work together. And kind of curious, what do those three mean to you? Or, maybe in this point in your career or just where you're at in your business, maybe one right now is stronger than anything else for you. So, feel free to talk about all three or just one that you're really passionate about in this moment.
Okay. Well, just to kind of set the tone, because what I say otherwise could be seen a different way. I will tell you that on for many reasons, I believe I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Grew up not having much to want, and lived a pretty good life. And I say that because my personal philosophy that I live by is anytime anything is all about the money, I'm out. Money has got to be a byproduct of doing the right thing. And in business, unfortunately, we all have too many stories about people doing the wrong thing. It's all over the news. And so, again, with that in mind, people might think that, I'm anti-profit. It's like, no. I want to make a lot of money. I want to live a good life. But I want to, again, money has got to be the byproduct of doing the right thing. And that's really where I come from when I talk about and the way I run business.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you talk about having the silver spoon, it makes me think of a situation like where I was in when I was out in corporate, but wanting to get into my business. It's sometimes challenging for people who are comfortable to venture into this unknown. What was that like for you? Because I think that's a pretty big deal to go from comfort to really fulfilling what you're more called to do. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, not to plug my podcast or anything, but my thing is individuation. And again, it's a phrase that most people haven't heard. And if they saw the word, they couldn't pronounce it. But individuation is a phase we all go through several times throughout our life. It's where you stop behaving the way others expect you to behave or doing what other people want you to do and start doing what's important to you. Damn the consequences, damn the damage to the relationships that, might come from it. And so I didn't care when I decided to leave the banking industry and do something else, which by the way, when I did that, I didn't know what else would be. I didn't care what happened. I didn't care if, I wound up losing everything and living in my car, say, as worst case example. I didn't care just because I was, and maybe not caring gives you a sense of how done I was. I just wasn't, I wasn't going to go to San Francisco to the financial district and, as I like to say, my experience in the corporate world was a handshake in the morning, a handshake up front in the morning, and a stab in the back by the afternoon. That's, that's the brutal corporate world that many of us know about. And so it was interesting. It was a little unnerving. I enjoyed the little bit of free time it gave me, where I could just, go for bicycle rides and so on, and not have to worry about checking in first thing in the morning. But I did it with the full faith that the path was going to show itself, and it did. And the amazing thing was, in the corporate world, I beat my head against the wall to make inches every day, and I made a lot of inches. But when I branched off and decided I wasn't going to do that anymore, I wasn't going to be who others expected me to be, and I was going to go explore what I was all about, the chain of events that happened that led me to where I am today were unexpected. I wasn't looking for them. And if I chose to try to create them, I probably wouldn't have been able to. They were just, it's like, if you ever wanted to feel what the sign of, here's your sign felt like, that was it, because it was all just being laid out in front of me. And it was, to me, it's like I was on the right path because of everything that was laid out. And I think that's a great metaphor for people who are trying to find their way. When you touch on that right spot, you'll know, because things will start to happen without much effort. When you find yourself beating your head against the wall, like I felt I did for so many years, pay attention, because the universe is trying to give you a sign.
And it doesn't stop giving you signs. It gets louder, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you believe that it was because you had the faith and that non-resistant approach that it was much easier for you than it is for the people who are maybe, hitting their heads against the same blocks all the time?
Well, it's interesting, because when people talk about individuation, they say individuation is about being, not doing, right? And when I think about being, I think about just being silent for a moment and paying attention to what's going on around you. Since I first, started in the corporate world at 18, I tried to make things happen. I forced the hand, when I was told no, I found an end around to make it happen. And the interesting thing is that, everything that I made happen never worked out. And, again, when I finally stopped trying to make things happen and started letting things happen, that's when it all started working out. Now, look, is that going to be everybody's experience? I don't know, probably not. But I think what's important is finding what's right for you, finding your path, your way of receiving the signals about where you should be going. And I like to say that it's that voice we hear in our head constantly about, hey, I'd rather be doing this, or I wish I could do this, or wouldn't it be great if? The problem is that that voice is not very loud, and so unless you're really paying attention to it and looking for it, you're going to miss it, and you're going to miss all the little signals that it gives you.
How can you tell, and maybe it's a similar voice, especially since we work with so many people who own businesses, part of me is even thinking about, I wonder if people are getting a voice in their business of, you need to pivot, or you need to grow from what you are, because so many entrepreneurs are high performing, growth oriented people that once we get good at something, we're ready to move on to something else. So I think there's a piece of that, but I also think, when you can make your work your hobby, and, like there's people who can figure out how to make their hobby be what gives them money. I guess, is the hobby voice in the same realm of just pursue what you love, whether or not it turns into something that takes care of you and your family? Or is there like an entrepreneur voice, or is it the same voice? I don't know.
For me, I don't believe it was. I grew up racing motorcycles and cars, and I'm not just street racing, real track racing stuff, and that was my passion. And I've always said that my fantasy job was I would have raced NASCAR, right? To be able to do that and make the kind of money that they're making, how cool would that be? And I know it's a grueling schedule, traveling the country, all that, but hey, it'd be worth it. The reality is, though, again, as I, pictured myself in that for a long, oftentimes I pictured myself in that and kind of felt like what it would be. The part that I realized is I would probably crumble under the pressure of putting on the happy face when you're not happy, going and doing the interview after when somebody wrecked you on the last lap, or having to do those public appearance things when you just weren't into it. That's not me. And so that was my fantasy job. That was something I loved doing, driving fast in cars and motorcycles, but that's really not what I could do for a living. I never would have said my fantasy job is to be an executive coach and speaker. Right. Yeah. But, and I'm sure this is coming through right here. Clearly, that's what lights me up, right? I love talking about this stuff. Yes, I have an opinion. Yes, I know you need to make a profit, but you know what? You need to take care of yourself. You need to take care of your employees. You need to take care of the people that are important to you. And that probably means that you got to turn a profit to be able to do it. But I believe that there's a way to do it by staying true to yourself and your community. And, and that's, maybe that's another direction we will wind up taking on this call. But, that's a part of it.
So when you talk about that true voice within yourself, we often refer to it, right, as authenticity. What are maybe some tools or some advice that you would give someone to find that so they can be passionate and show up and to do what they love?
For everybody it's different, but some ways that I went about it and I think are universal on some level is, hey, read books, right? They're an adventure in and of itself. You learn a lot. Well, I'm not a book reader, right? But audiobooks, kind of cool. I like those. I'm a runner and a cyclist and so on. And so, listening to audiobooks while you're out and about, not bad. I also wind up driving a lot for whatever reason. I just do. And not always, but for, I go through phases, listen to audiobooks while I'm driving. I hired my first executive coach in 2003, maybe. And I hired them personally when I was working for the bank, even though, everything you heard about executive coaches back then was, if you're at a high level, your company would hire you an executive coach. Well, I figured, hey, I'll hire my own and I'll suffer the financial hit, but I'll learn a lot. So I did. The first time I was ever broadsided by a car on my motorcycle on the street, my attorney had me go see a therapist to make sure that I didn't rattle anything up top. And my first experience ever talking to a therapist. And, back then, because this is in the mid 80s, seeing a therapist, wasn't exactly a good thing. But man, I learned a lot and grew from it. Mastermind groups, networking groups, just all the different ways. Look, here's the deal. None of us can ever imagine all that life has to offer, right? Whether it's for you or not, right? But there's so many different things you can do in life. And in this day and age, newer job titles are coming up all the time, right? So go out and find out as much as you can about all the different things going on. And through that, you'll probably start to find breadcrumbs. And hopefully those breadcrumbs will lead you, into the bread loaf and so on down the road.
Yeah, that's so true. It's something that I found when I was a leader and when I coach. When you're a leader that brings out the best in people, you have to realize that the best today only gets better because people's capacity for doing more as they get exposed to other things. And so, yeah, I love what you're saying. It's always wanting to explore and being open to coaching. We've had this conversation, and I just had one with a friend of mine yesterday. For me, coaching really is about taking amazing people and helping them with just a few tweaks that make them even better. But I met an executive once who said, whatever you do, don't say it's coaching. Like they see coaching as like a punishable offense. And I just think it's funny how people see things differently versus you who are exploring, and you found that.
Yeah.
You also said something that I'm curious. I can't pronounce individualization, something like
Individuation.
okay, that helps. Individuation.
Patient.
All right.
It's a
The
tough
I
word.
Right. So there's a piece that I almost would have thought where we're going is already inside of us, which I think is true. However, sometimes we need to explore externally to see what lights us up or what sticks to us. Is that kind of what that exploration piece comes from?
Yeah, being that I'm not 20 years old anymore, it's so much easier for me today to know what works for me or doesn't work for me, what excites me or what doesn't excite me. When I was 20, it's like you don't have the time and experience under your belt to know, right? So you got to go explore all kinds of stuff. Now I don't have to explore as much because I kind of have my path. But initially, even if you are older and have a lot of experience but haven't really explored much, you got to start out with kind of that big trail and work your way down to a more of a focus. Kat, I do want to add one thing to your question that I didn't think of until Brian started talking, was mentorship, right? Go find a mentor, or just as good, go be a mentor, right? Because you learn just as much being a mentor to somebody else as you do to find a mentor. And let's be clear, mentorship is not something that you can make happen. A true mentorship is something that happens. But again, you need to expose yourself to the opportunity to connect with somebody on that level so they can become a mentor, or that you can become their mentor.
Oh, that was gold. And I really believe that when we teach other, we teach ourselves, and we definitely learn a lot more, especially about the things that we might preach and not definitely do.
Mm-hmm.
So, we learn where the gap is.
Yeah. And here's also, you just said something again, Kat, that kind of piqued my interest. My position is one that I know that a lot of people aren't comfortable with. But when I speak publicly, when I work with a client, I am happy to throw flat out my failures, my I wish I wouldn't have's, right? My humilities. I share those things with it because, hey, look, we all do it. We all go through it. We just don't all want to admit it. And again, when you're talking to somebody and you're willing to admit how you screwed up so many times in your life, they're willing to open up and be vulnerable. And it's from that vulnerability that you both grow, right? Again, if you're posturing, and you're trying to be somebody you're not, you're never going to grow into who you can become.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
I really want to know, for you, what does the word purpose mean? And how, what have you done specifically to find it or to define it, maybe?
Yeah. What comes to mind for me as you say that, this topic just came up for me the other day. And I thought to myself, when you do something that really works out great, you hit it out of the park, if you will, you got to be proud of it, and you're going to have a moment of I did that, right? But it's interesting. I feel like for me, the emotion that actually hits higher for me when that kind of situation happens is proof that I have a purpose, proof that I made a difference. that can't, and because that just happened, it can't be taken away. It's that, that is it. And yes, there's blended in there, there's pride and all that stuff as well. But to me, it's more the validation that I have a purpose, that I can make a difference. And maybe this is it, that I made an impact. Because, we all wake up each morning and do what we do, but how many days in your whole lifetime can you say that there was that moment where I made an impact? A true impact. I don't think it's that many. And so when that moment hits, rather than feeling prideful, which of course I do, I feel purposeful, because I feel like that's one of these rare moments where I can see my impact and the reason I'm here.
So would you say, in a sense, maybe purpose is fulfillment?
Broaden that just a bit.
When we feel fulfilled, it's usually when things click and we see that our own experiences, our own lessons, our own voice, our own character, everything about us is the reason why that impact happened. So our whole being becomes, the reason why something clicked with someone. And it becomes like fulfilling as a whole, like who we are gets justified.
Yeah, I think there's a piece of that. I think I spent a lot of my younger years feeling a little worthless, and I guardedly say that because I'm not sure that completely resonates. But hey, I was a high school dropout, doing kind of your run-of-the-mill jobs, still being taken care of by my family. I have one older sibling, and she was the darling of the family. I was okay, whatever. and so, so when something really works out, and I had a clear hand in making an impact, I feel like my worth is validated. Mm-hmm. And is that fulfillment? Yes. But it's also, for me, a reason to go on another day. And I don't want that to sound dark, but it just, it's like, you do have something to offer. You do make a positive impact. Other people do care about you. And what you've chosen to do with your life is making a positive impact on others in society. So I think it's really, as I talk, it's like, it's a self-validation. Because, I guess if I did the job that I did and didn't feel like I was, hey, I was making money, I was surviving, maybe I was even making a lot of money, but I didn't feel like, I felt kind of like a fraud, wouldn't mean much. But to do what I've chosen to do and to get validation that I am having a positive impact, man, to me, that's living.
What I'm hearing in that is just the power of service, of really serving others. And I think about, from a fulfillment perspective, the business owners who really see their business as being something that makes the world a little better in the corners that they can touch. I think there is a piece of that. And yeah, there's some people who serve for validation. And, we always like those little accolades, but sometimes that validation also says we're on the right path, do more of it. Like, I know when I'm coaching is when I feel 100% in my zone. And I'm like, I'm 100% me with nothing held back. And so to me, there's like an actualization thing that's happening. And so to me, the fulfillment's in the act, but then of course the purpose or what fulfills is that service. And I'm just hearing you talking about how much you appreciate and love serving.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, guys, you don't have to be a coach or a doctor to, have that, HVAC, roofing, equipment rental. I don't care what it is, right? You can find that in no matter what you do.
Right.
Yeah, and from the human needs standpoint, the way I'm hearing what you're saying is we have the needs of the soul, basically, where we want that growth, we want that contribution. And when those are the needs that tie our life into the meaning we associate with what we do. And that gives value to our time, to who we are as a person.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. I like to always think about, see, for me, at the end of the day, when we're old and gray and sitting in our rocking chair, for me, all I have is my stories. And so I try to live my life where I have stories. Again, maybe walking away from the bank job right before the Great Recession, wasn't financially the greatest thing to do, but what a great story. And you can glean from it all kinds of different stuff, but again, racing cars, what a great story. Doing an adventure, I chain of events, almost spur of the moment, wound up driving up to Mount Shasta and starting the climb at 2 a.m. We hit the ice caps at sunrise, and of the 14,000 feet, I made it up in about 12,000. That was all I had. Where 2 guys turned down before me, and 2 guys actually made it to the top. Why would I do so? That's crazy. Yeah, I know, but it's a great story, right? And again, to me, at the end of the day, and so great stories can come from that person you helped, that thing that you stumbled upon and it turned out to be riches. Just stories. Look for me, it's look for the story that you can tell and that impacts others.
And I'm really curious to find out, who was someone that made a big impact in your life? Maybe it was a mentor or a parent or a friend. I'm just really curious who has helped you, because I know how important it is.
Yeah. I've had a few mentors in my life, and trying to narrow it down for the short amount of time that we have to talk. I will say, first and foremost, there was one person who made the biggest that turned me from the chaos that I was in to the right direction, which was still a bumpy road or whatnot. The guy's name was James Kay. He was in the local Kiwanis Club with me, and he ran an automotive repair facility where I got my car fixed. And when I was pretty much rock bottom, he picked me up and initially put me to work as a handyman for his shop in his home. And eventually he started to work in one of his facilities until I branched off and went back to banking. And this is back in the late 80s, early 90s. He made the biggest impact in my life. And I look at some of the things that he did for me and let me get away with without, maybe, chewing me out or something. And that the impact he made, really, and he did this for a lot of people. He was a saint in that regard. He was an asshole on many levels. Oh, probably can't say that. I'm sorry. He was
yes, we're all fine. We don't give a shit. Go for it.
All right. He was messed up on a lot of different levels, but he is by far the one person has made the biggest difference in my life. And there was others as well. So I don't want to, if anybody heard this, well, he didn't mention me and I know what I did. Yeah, so do I. I'm trying to be condensed here. That's the one person though.
Yeah, one of many. We'll start with that. It's not the biggest one.
Yeah, but again, it's less than 10. It's those type of people that come into your life. There's only a handful, at least for me, my experience.
No, I agree. And I'm curious to hear, what was that one thing that he inspired in you, or maybe saw in you, or what was the thing that moved you to call him maybe the biggest influence in your life?
I don't think I can answer that question. I mean, he was a combination between a big brother and a father. Um, he let me, how about this? He let me learn from my mistakes.
Oh,
Prior to that,
beautiful.
I just would make the mistakes and nobody was around to help me learn from them. He actually helped me learn from my mistakes and believe in me. That's probably the biggest thing.
Powerful.
That's powerful. Well, it would be a mistake to not let others know how to find you and follow up. Fortunately, we're out of time, and I want to make sure that people know how they can connect with you, hear more, and maybe share some exciting stuff that's coming up for you.
Okay. So my website is anthonymetten.com, and that's METTEN. So anthonymetten.com. On there, the site's being rebranded at the moment, so the new site should be up in 30 days. But there you can find my podcast. On May 15th of this year, I'll be doing a TEDx talk on individuation, and so you'll be able to find the link for that, as well as other videos and whatnot I have on there. But that's probably the one place where you can find everything you ever want to know about me, and probably a little more.
Good. Do you have just one piece of advice or a thought you want to leave with our audience before we wrap up?
Explore who you are. It is a deep and fulfilling journey with all kinds of aha moments and improvements. And I don't know a better way to say it. You'll find better things the more you explore yourself. That's not self-absorption. That's not meditating, or do it your own way. But go explore yourself, because you have so much untapped things about you. And as my podcast individuation is, who we are from birth isn't necessarily who we're meant to be as an adult. So go figure that out, because you probably will be pleasantly surprised.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Anthony. It's so good to have you on our show. And then we just also want to invite our audience, follow us on YouTube or your podcatcher of choice. And we also have a Facebook group where we post every episode every time we release, and you get the opportunity to interact with Kat and I, or other audience members, so other business owners like yourself, who is in this journey of finding themselves, and start having conversations, because we could try to do this on our own, but having people, peers, or other people will greatly help you succeed.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next time.
Take care.